They stole the wrong alien woman. By sunrise, a mythic human was already at the fence. The transport ship drifted through the pale blue edge of the system, its engines quiet, its shields tuned low to avoid attention. Inside, the alien woman sat alone, hands folded, posture calm. To anyone watching, she looked ordinary, slender frame, soft features, simple traveling robes that marked her as a minor diplomatic courier at best. That was exactly why she had been chosen. The raiders struck fast. A burst of ion static blinded the transport's sensors. Gravity twisted for half a second, just long enough. Boarding clamps locked on. The ship never had time to call for help. When the hatch blew inward, armed figures poured through the smoke. Their movements were confident, practiced. This was not their first abduction. They moved past the panicking crew, stunning instead of killing. Clean, efficient. One of them pointed at the alien woman. That's her. She did not resist as energy cuffs closed around her wrists. She did not scream when they pulled her to her feet. Her eyes only flicked once toward the viewport, toward the distant stars, as if measuring time instead of distance. The Syndicate had done its research. They knew her species was rare. They knew her bloodline held political value. They believed ransom would come quickly and quietly. What they did not know was that her protection did not come from her people. The raiders dragged her onto their ship and jumped before any patrol could respond. By the time the transport drifted helpless and silent, the signal had already gone out. Not a distress call, a confirmation. Far away across human-controlled space, an old system woke up. On a remote station orbiting a dead rock, a single light turned green. A human officer looked at the screen, read the short line of text, and did not hesitate. He did not ask for clearance. He did not alert command. He stood, pulled on a worn jacket, and walked toward a small ship docked in shadow. The alien woman's captors took her to a frontier world that barely existed on official maps. No cities, no law worth mentioning, just a fortified compound surrounded by dust, razor wire, and automated guns. The kind of place people disappeared. They locked her in a reinforced room with a single light and a gravity field tuned to her species. The cuffs were removed. They did not think she needed them anymore. "You'll be comfortable," one guard said in broken trade speech. "Behave and you live well." She inclined her head politely. Hours passed. The syndicate leaders gathered in a central hall, already arguing over price and buyers. They congratulated themselves on how easy it had been. One even joked that the stories about her protection were probably ceremonial nonsense. "She's just another bargaining chip," he said. Outside, the compound sensors swept the horizon, nothing but dust storms and static. On the edge of the system, a small human ship dropped out of jump space. It was old by any standard, scarred hull, no escort. No visible weapons worth mentioning. It did not broadcast identification. It did not request permission to land. It simply burned toward the planet. The human inside did not sit in the pilot's chair like a soldier ready for battle. He leaned back, one hand resting on the console, eyes half closed as if listening to something only he could hear. A message appeared on his screen, automated, precise. Target confirmed, protection clause active. He nodded once. "All right," he said softly. "Let's go get her." By the time the ship touched down beyond sensor range, the first hints of sunrise were creeping across the planet's horizon. The human exited the ship alone. He carried no visible heavy weapon. Just a compact pack slung over one shoulder and a long coat that moved gently in the dry wind. His boots left clear prints in the dust as he walked. The compound's outer sensors caught him almost immediately. "Contact," a technician said, frowning at the display. "Single life form, human." Laughter broke out. "One human," a guard scoffed. "Send a drone." The drone lifted from its cradle and swept low across the terrain. Its camera zoomed in on the approaching figure. The human did not change pace. At 50 meters, the drone's feed flickered. At 40, it went dark. The technician stared at the blank screen. "Must be interference," someone muttered. Inside her room, the alien woman felt it before she heard anything. A shift in the air. A subtle pressure, like a promise being fulfilled. She allowed herself a small breath of relief. He was early. The compound went on alert anyway, more annoyed than afraid. Automated turrets tracked the human as he came into view, red targeting lights dancing over his chest. "Turn around," a speaker crackled. "This is private territory." The human stopped a few steps short of the fence. He looked up at the cameras, his expression calm, almost tired. "You took someone under my protection," he said. His voice was not raised. It did not need to be. "Open the gate." More laughter, thinner this time. "Shoot him," someone ordered. The turrets fired. The shots never reached him. Some veered aside at impossible angles. Others simply vanished midair, their energy bleeding away as if swallowed. Silence followed. The human lowered his hand. Inside the control room, panic rippled. "What was that? System error?" "No," the technician whispered. "That was not a system error." Inside her cell, the alien woman sat straighter. She did not fear what was coming. She feared only that someone might make it worse by delaying. The human resumed walking. Each step forward was unhurried, deliberate. Sensors failed as he passed them. Locks cycled open and shut without command. Power levels dipped and surged unpredictably. The syndicate leaders finally stopped arguing. "Who is that?" one demanded. No one answered. Old stories surfaced then, the kind told in half-jokes and warnings. Stories about humans who were not soldiers, not diplomats, but something else. Enforcers of agreements so old they predated current governments. Myths, everyone said, until now. The human reached the fence just as the sun crested the horizon, bathing the compound in pale gold light. He stopped. He did not touch the fence. He did not speak again. He simply waited. Inside, alarms wailed as internal doors unlocked themselves one by one. Guards shouted conflicting orders. Some ran, some froze. The alien woman closed her eyes briefly. The promise had been kept. Outside, the human stood patiently at the fence, silhouetted against the rising sun as the compound began to unravel from the inside. And this was only the beginning. The fence did not fall. That was the strange part. The human remained standing outside it, hands relaxed at his sides, coat moving slightly in the morning wind. He made no move to climb, cut, or destroy it. He simply waited as if the next step belonged to someone else. Inside the compound, panic spread faster than any alarm. Doors that should have been sealed slid open. Internal sensors went blind, then showed impossible readings. Power flickered in waves, not shutting down completely, but never stabilizing either. The systems were not broken. They were being ignored. "This is not possible," one of the syndicate leaders said, his voice tight. "It's one man." "No," another replied quietly. "It's a human." The difference mattered. Guards rushed toward firing positions, weapons clutched tight. Orders overlapped, contradicted, changed by the second. Some demanded an all-out attack. Others wanted negotiations. A few, the older ones, said nothing at all. They just stared at the screens, pale and silent. One of the junior officers finally asked the question everyone was avoiding. "Who is he?" The technician hesitated, fingers shaking over the console. "There's no active record," he said. "No military tag, no civilian ID, but there are archived references, very old ones." "Read them," the technician swallowed. "Human Mythic class responder, appears when protection clauses are violated, does not escalate, does not retreat, outcome described as inevitable." Silence followed. In her room, the alien woman heard the distant chaos but remained seated. Her species had learned long ago that when humans invoked their old promises, interference only caused more damage. She trusted him completely, not because he was powerful, but because he was precise. She remembered the first time her people had signed that clause. It had not been during peace. It had been during a war they were losing. Humanity had been weaker then, fewer ships, fewer allies, but they had made an offer no one else had, protection, not domination. They did not ask for territory. They did not ask for tribute. They only asked that the agreement never be tested lightly. Someone had tested it today. Outside, the human shifted his weight slightly. That small movement triggered another cascade of failures inside the compound. A secure vault unlocked, a vehicle bay door slid open. The syndicate's private escape shuttle began pre-flight checks on its own. "Stop it," someone shouted. "Shut everything down," they tried. Nothing responded. A guard raised his weapon, hands shaking, and aimed through a narrow firing slit at the human's chest. "I can take him," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. He pulled the trigger. The weapon discharged, then exploded in his hands, throwing him backward. The human did not even look in that direction. Fear crossed a threshold. This was no longer a standoff. It was a countdown. The alien woman stood as her door slid open without warning. No guards waited outside. The corridor lights flickered softly, guiding rather than alarming. She stepped out. Her feet carried her calmly through the halls as chaos unfolded elsewhere. Guards ran past her without noticing. Some collapsed, overcome by panic more than any external force. Others dropped their weapons and pressed themselves against walls, whispering prayers in languages long forgotten. She did not hurry. She knew where he would be. At the fence, the human lifted his head slightly as the main gate began to unlock itself. Heavy metal bars slid aside with a deep groan. He stepped forward for the first time. Inside the command hall, the syndicate leader who had ordered the abduction finally broke. "Bring her out," he shouted. "Now, give her back, we didn't know." No one answered. The alien woman emerged into the courtyard just as the human crossed the threshold. Their eyes met across the open space. For a moment, everything else seemed to freeze. He inclined his head, a small, respectful gesture. "You were delayed," he said, as if commenting on the weather. She allowed herself a faint smile. "They were confident," she replied. "That's common," he said. He did not touch her. He did not need to. His presence alone shifted the gravity of the space around them. The compound systems, recognizing the transfer of custody in some impossible way, powered down one by one. Weapons went dead. Shields collapsed. The syndicate leaders stumbled into the courtyard, surrounded by their own helpless guards. They fell to their knees without being ordered to. "We surrender," one said desperately. "We will pay, we will disappear, just call him off." The human looked at them for the first time. His expression was not angry, it was disappointed. "This was not about money," he said. "And I don't make threats." He turned away from them and gestured gently for the alien woman to walk beside him. They headed toward the open gate. No one tried to stop them. As they passed, some guards lowered their heads. Others watched in stunned silence. A few wept openly, not because they were hurt, but because they understood what they had just survived. At the fence line, the alien woman paused. "They will try again," she said softly. "Others will hear rumors but doubt them." The human nodded. "They always do." He tapped something on his wrist. Far above, his ship responded, engines warming. "What happens to this place?" she asked. He glanced back at the compound. "Nothing dramatic," he said. "It will collapse under investigation, internal betrayal, and fear. The story will spread faster than any explosion." As if on cue, one of the syndicate's towers lost power completely and folded in on itself, not violently, but quietly, like a structure that had finally accepted gravity. The alien woman watched without satisfaction. "That is enough," she said. "Yes," the human agreed. "It usually is." They walked into the open desert together as the sun climbed higher. Behind them, the compound stood broken, its authority gone, its reputation in ruins. By the time distant patrol ships began to arrive, there was nothing left to fight, only a lesson already learned. And somewhere in the back channels of the galaxy, whispers began to spread again, about the alien woman who could not be taken. And the human who always arrived before it was too late. The patrol ships arrived too late to matter. They hovered above the broken compound, scanning ruins, picking up frightened life signs, recording evidence for reports that would never fully explain what happened. By then, the desert was quiet again. The human ship was already gone. It rose smoothly from behind a ridge, climbed without haste, and slipped into jump space as if the system itself had made room for it. Inside, the alien woman sat across from the human in the small, utilitarian cabin. There were no restraints, no guards, no formality, just two seats, a dim console glow, and the low hum of engines. She studied him openly now. Up close, he looked ordinary, no armor. No visible augmentations. His face carried lines of age and fatigue, not the sharp edges of a warrior. He looked more like someone who had lived too long to be impressed by danger. "You came alone," she said. "I always do," he replied. "That seems inefficient." "It's effective," he corrected gently. She inclined her head, accepting the answer. For a while, neither spoke. Outside, stars stretched into lines as the ship traveled between systems. Finally, she broke the silence. They did not understand what they took. They never do. They believed the clause was symbolic. The human let out a quiet breath, almost a sigh. "Most people think promises decay over time," he said. "Humans learned the opposite." She watched his hands as he adjusted a setting on the console. They were steady, unremarkable. Hands that could have belonged to a farmer or engineer. "How old is the clause?" she asked. "Older than some governments," he said. "You signed it when my species was still proving it could survive. And you still honor it. Yes, even now. Especially now." She absorbed that in silence. In another part of the galaxy, the syndicate's collapse was already accelerating. News traveled fast, even when official channels tried to suppress it. Guards who escaped the compound told their versions of the story in bars, safe houses, and hidden comms. Each retelling sharpened the fear. They spoke of weapons that refused to fire, of doors that opened on their own, of a human who did not rush, threaten, or chase. A human who waited. Rival syndicates listened carefully. Some laughed. Some dismissed it as panic-induced exaggeration. Others quietly canceled planned operations that involved protected species or human trade routes. One group did not. They were older, more arrogant, and deeply invested in proving that humanity's myths were outdated. To them, fear was just another tool to exploit. They began preparations within hours. Back aboard the human ship, a soft alert chimed. The human glanced at the display and frowned slightly. "Someone is testing the waters," he said. The alien woman felt a familiar tightening in her chest. "So soon?" "They always rush," he replied. "Fear makes people impatient." She folded her hands. "They will not target me again." "No," he agreed. "They'll choose someone else, someone they think matters less. That makes it worse." He nodded once. "That's why I can't take you straight home." She looked up sharply. "My people will protest." "They already are," he said. Loudly. "Then why delay? Because if I return you now, the story ends with you. If I don't, the story expands." She considered that. "You want them to see. I want them to understand." The ship altered course slightly. They traveled in silence for a long time. On a trade moon near contested space, the second abduction happened. This time it was a young alien courier, low status, barely protected. The syndicate moved fast, brutal, and public, broadcasting their success on shadow networks. A message followed. No human response came. They celebrated too early. The human ship dropped out of jump space above the moon less than an hour later. Again, alone. Again, unannounced. This time, the alien woman stayed aboard. She watched through the viewport as the human descended toward the settlement. It was larger than the first compound, more populated, filled with civilians who had nothing to do with the crime. "Will there be damage?" she asked quietly. "No," he said. "How can you be sure?" "Because damage creates martyrs," he replied. "And martyrs inspire repeats." He landed in an open square and stepped out. This time the crowd saw him. Word spread instantly. Humans were not rare, but this human felt different. People moved away without knowing why. Conversations died mid-sentence. The human walked through the settlement, following a path only he could see. Security forces tried to intercept him. Their vehicles stalled. Their comms failed. He never touched them. Inside the syndicate's holding center, the abducted courier cried quietly, convinced no one was coming. Then the lights softened, the locks disengaged, and a calm voice spoke through the room. "Stand up," it said. "You're leaving." By the time the syndicate realized what was happening, it was over. Their leaders were exposed publicly, accounts frozen, allies abandoning them in real time as fear outpaced loyalty. The human walked out with the courier beside him, shielding her not with force but with presence. The alien woman watched it all from orbit. She felt something shift inside her. When he returned to the ship, the courier asleep in a medical pod, she spoke before he could sit. "You are changing the balance," he shrugged slightly. "The balance was already broken. They will adapt. Yes, they will try to counter you. Yes, and you will keep coming. Yes." She stood and bowed deeply, a formal gesture from her culture reserved for life debts and guardians. "You are not what the galaxy thinks humanity is." He looked uncomfortable. "We never are," she straightened. "What happens when you're gone?" she asked. "When there is no one like you left to answer these clauses." He met her gaze then, really met it. "Then it means we've done our job," he said, "because by then no one will need reminding." Outside, the stars shifted again as the ship moved on. Across the galaxy, plans were rewritten, operations canceled, old treaties dusted off and reread with care, because now everyone knew something they had forgotten. Humanity did not need fleets to enforce its promises. Sometimes it only needed one human to show up. And fear did not spread like fire, it spread like gravity, slow, invisible, and impossible to escape once felt. Across trade hubs and border worlds, conversations changed. Deals were rewritten. Old crimes were quietly undone. Species that had once taken risks near human space suddenly remembered better judgment. Not because humanity issued threats, but because silence followed by action was worse. The human ship moved through it all like a shadow. No escort, no announcement, just presence. The alien woman watched the change from the quiet of the cabin. News feeds flickered with indirect references, never naming him directly, but always circling the same truth. Syndicates dissolving overnight. Prisoners released without explanation. Entire operations abandoned mid-plan. "Your people are being blamed," she said. "They usually are," he replied. "Does that concern you?" "No. Why?" "Because fear without understanding fades," he said. "Understanding stays," she turned toward him. "And what do you want them to understand?" "That humans don't forget," he said, "and we don't abandon responsibility." Another alert chimed softly. This one carried a different tone. The human studied the display longer than before. "This one is organized," he said. The alien woman felt it too, a tension in the air, subtle but sharp. "They want to trap you." "Yes. They are using protected people as leverage." "Yes. And you're going anyway," he looked at her. "I have to." The trap was set in a system known for neutrality. A massive orbital station, layered with laws, observers, and enough civilian traffic to make any direct action impossible. The syndicate behind it believed they had found the answer. Bind the human with rules. Bind him with witnesses. Bind him with the fear of collateral damage. They issued their message publicly. One protected individual held, return clauses revoked, demands attached. The galaxy watched. The human ship arrived on schedule. It docked openly. The station buzzed with tension. Security forces were on high alert. Legal representatives argued in corridors. Cameras tracked every movement. The human stepped out alone. The alien woman remained aboard, her hands clenched tightly for the first time since her rescue. "This is different," she whispered to the empty cabin. Inside the station, the human walked through layers of law and procedure. Officials tried to stop him, to delay him with forms and authority. He listened politely. He waited. He did not resist. That worried them more than defiance. The syndicate revealed itself in a public chamber, surrounded by observers. Their captive stood beside them, terrified, clearly unharmed, but clearly trapped. They smiled. "This station recognizes neutrality," their leader said. "You cannot act here." The human looked around the chamber, at the cameras, at the witnesses, at the terrified captive. "You're right," he said. "I can't." Relief washed through the room, then he continued. "But I don't have to." He stepped back and waited. Nothing happened at first. Then the station systems began issuing warnings. Not failures, notifications, compliance conflicts, treaty overlaps, jurisdictional contradictions. The station's AI froze, caught between rules it could not prioritize. Observers argued. Lawyers shouted. The syndicate's leader frowned. "What is this?" he demanded. The human spoke calmly. "This station is bound by 37 human-linked trade accords," he said. "Each one includes a protection clause. You activated all of them by making this public." The leader's smile faltered. "You can't use law as a weapon," he snapped. "I'm not," the human replied. "You are." One by one, the observers began receiving updates from their governments. Emergency recalls, withdrawal notices, asset freezes. The station's neutrality collapsed under the weight of its own agreements. Security forces turned uncertain. The captives' restraints unlocked. The syndicate panicked. "This isn't over," the leader shouted. "You think this makes you powerful?" The human met his gaze. "No," he said, "it makes you finished." The captive ran. No one stopped them. The syndicate was detained not by force, but by unanimous decision. No violence, no spectacle, just consequence. When the human returned to his ship, the alien woman was waiting at the hatch. "You didn't touch them," she said. "I didn't need to. They tried to bind you. They bound themselves," she exhaled slowly. "This will change everything. Yes, they will stop believing the myths." He paused. "That's the risk." "Then why continue?" He looked out at the stars. "Because when myths fade, principles must replace them." The ship departed the station as debates raged behind it. Across the galaxy, something deeper than fear began to take hold. Respect, not for power, but for restraint. The alien woman felt it then fully. This was not about one human. It never had been. It was about a species that learned long ago that the strongest promise was the one kept without being seen. And now, the galaxy was being forced to learn the same lesson. "Got it." Across trade hubs and border worlds, conversations changed. Deals were rewritten. Old crimes were quietly undone. Species that had once taken risks near human space suddenly remembered better judgment. Not because humanity issued threats, but because silence followed by action was worse. The human ship moved through it all like a shadow. No escort, No announcement, just presence. The alien woman watched the change from the quiet of the cabin. News feeds flickered with indirect references, never naming him directly but always circling the same truth. Syndicates dissolving overnight, prisoners released without explanation, entire operations abandoned mid-plan. "Your people are being blamed," she said. "They usually are," he replied. "Does that concern you?" "No. Why?" "Because fear without understanding fades," he said. "Understanding stays." She turned toward him. "And what do you want them to understand?" "That humans don't forget," he said. "And we don't abandon responsibility." Another alert chimed softly. This one carried a different tone. The human studied the display longer than before. "This one is organized," he said. The alien woman felt it too, a tension in the air, subtle but sharp. "They want to trap you." "Yes, they are using protected people as leverage." "Yes, and you're going anyway," he looked at her. "I have to." The trap was set in a system known for neutrality. A massive orbital station, layered with laws, observers, and enough civilian traffic to make any direct action impossible. The syndicate behind it believed they had found the answer. Bind the human with rules. Bind him with witnesses. Bind him with the fear of collateral damage. They issued their message publicly. One protected individual held, return clauses revoked, demands attached. The galaxy watched. The human ship arrived on schedule. It docked openly. The station buzzed with tension. Security forces were on high alert. Legal representatives argued in corridors. Cameras tracked every movement. The human stepped out alone. The alien woman remained aboard, her hands clenched tightly for the first time since her rescue. "This is different," she whispered to the empty cabin. Inside the station, the human walked through layers of law and procedure. Officials tried to stop him, to delay him with forms and authority. He listened politely. He waited. He did not resist. That worried them more than defiance. The syndicate revealed itself in a public chamber, surrounded by observers. Their captive stood beside them, terrified, clearly unharmed but clearly trapped. They smiled. "This station recognizes neutrality," their leader said. "You cannot act here." The human looked around the chamber, at the cameras, at the witnesses, at the terrified captive. "You're right," he said. "I can't." Relief washed through the room, then he continued. "But I don't have to." He stepped back and waited. Nothing happened at first. Then the station systems began issuing warnings. Not failures, notifications, compliance conflicts, treaty overlaps, jurisdictional contradictions. The station's AI froze, caught between rules it could not prioritize. Observers argued. Lawyers shouted. The syndicate's leader frowned. "What is this?" he demanded. The human spoke calmly. "This station is bound by 37 human-linked trade accords," he said. "Each one includes a protection clause. You activated all of them by making this public." The leader's smile faltered. "You can't use law as a weapon," he snapped. "I'm not," the human replied. "You are." One by one, the observers began receiving updates from their governments. Emergency recalls, withdrawal notices, asset freezes. The station's neutrality collapsed under the weight of its own agreements. Security forces turned uncertain. The captives' restraints unlocked. The syndicate panicked. "This isn't over," the leader shouted. "You think this makes you powerful?" The human met his gaze. "No," he said, "it makes you finished." The captive ran. No one stopped them. The syndicate was detained not by force but by unanimous decision. No violence, no spectacle, just consequence. When the human returned to his ship, the alien woman was waiting at the hatch. "You didn't touch them," she said. "I didn't need to. They tried to bind you. They bound themselves," she exhaled slowly. "This will change everything. Yes, they will stop believing the myths." He paused. "That's the risk." "Then why continue?" He looked out at the stars. "Because when myths fade, principles must replace them." The ship departed the station as debates raged behind it. Across the galaxy, something deeper than fear began to take hold. Respect, not for power, but for restraint. The alien woman felt it then fully. This was not about one human. It never had been. It was about a species that learned long ago that the strongest promise was the one kept without being seen. And now the galaxy was being forced to learn the same lesson. The galaxy did not change overnight. It slowed. That was the real difference. Where ships once rushed through risky routes, they now hesitated. Where syndicates once tested borders, they paused. Where people once assumed promises were temporary, they began to read old agreements more carefully. The human ship moved quietly through it all. No alarms followed it anymore. only distance. Inside the cabin, the alien woman stood near the viewport, watching a blue star swell as they approached her home system. Her hands were steady, but her thoughts were not. What had happened could not be undone. What had been revealed could not be hidden again. "You're thinking too loudly," the human said without turning. She looked at him in surprise. "I didn't speak." "You don't have to," he replied. "Not after this long." She considered that, then nodded. "They will remember what you did," she said, "but they will also remember you. That's temporary." "What is?" "The lesson," he said. The ship slipped out of jump space and coasted toward a waiting escort of alien vessels. They did not surround the human ship. They flew beside it, respectful distance maintained. No weapons armed, no challenges issued. The alien woman felt a strange tightening in her chest. "They sent escorts," she said. "They sent witnesses," the human corrected. The landing platform was filled when they arrived. Officials, elders, envoys from allied systems. Cameras hovered at a polite distance. This was not a celebration. It was recognition. When the hatch opened, the alien woman stepped out first. Her people gasped softly, relief washing over them. She raised a hand to calm them. Then the human followed. A ripple passed through the crowd. Some bowed, some stepped back, some simply stared. An elder approached slowly, ancient eyes sharp with understanding. "You honored an old promise," the elder said. The human inclined his head. "We always do. Even when it costs you," the human met his gaze. "Especially then." The elder studied him for a long moment, then turned to the gathered crowd. "Let it be recorded," he said, voice carrying across the platform. "The clause stands, humanity stands." No cheer followed, only silence, but it was a heavy silence, one that carried weight. Back aboard the ship, preparing to depart, the alien woman hesitated at the hatch. "You could stay," she said. "There would be honor, safety." The human smiled faintly. "I don't do well with either. You'll keep going." "Yes." "Until when?" He looked past her toward the stars. "Until no one calls." She searched his face. "And if that never happens?" "Then that means we're still needed." She bowed deeply, lower than before, deeper than protocol demanded. "You turned fear into understanding," she said. "That is not a small thing." He shrugged. "It's a human habit." The hatch closed. The ship lifted smoothly and vanished into jump space without fanfare. Across the galaxy, the final ripple spread. Syndicates dissolved or transformed into legitimate networks, not because they were forced, but because the risk was no longer worth it. Young leaders studied old mistakes. Elders dusted off treaties once signed and never tested. Stories changed too, no longer about a mythic human who broke compounds or walked through gunfire, but about something quieter, a human who arrived on time, a human who did not threaten, a human who waited. In distant systems, children learned a new saying: if you break a promise, expect consequences. If you break a human promise, expect a human. Years passed, then decades, then a generation. The clauses remained, but they were rarely invoked. Not because they were weak, but because everyone knew they were real. In a quiet outpost on the edge of known space, an old human ship sat docked for routine maintenance. Its owner stood nearby, hands in pockets, watching the stars. A young officer approached, nervous but curious. "Sir," he asked, "are the stories true?" The human glanced at him. "Which ones?" "That you stopped wars without firing a shot." The human thought for a moment. "I stopped people from making the same mistake twice," he said. The officer hesitated. "What happens when you're gone?" The human smiled just a little. "Then someone else shows up." The officer frowned. "Another myth?" "No," the human said. "Another human." Far away in systems that had never seen him, people slept easier without knowing why. Because some protections do not need to be visible to work, and some species do not need to rule the galaxy to shape it. They only need to keep their word and show up before sunrise.